ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else watching today. I'm Paul O'Neill, and Nick Halstead is with us. I can't get my breath because it's been such a massive rise to what you're about to do. And what does it feel like to now call yourself a 2023 British touring car driver? How's that?
I know it hasn't quite sunk in. I've been to a few events the last week, as the motorsports kind of wound down, and it's just blown me away just how many people have rushed over just to congratulate. It's like, wow, I never got this for being part of British GT, which I love British GT, but it hasn't had the same reaction. I don't know if it's that, like, everyone's kind of good on you. It's like, that's scary shit to go do that. But yeah, no, it's been a great feeling. It really has.
And what well, let's go back actually. So we first met each other, I think it was mid or to late 2016 on a McLaren track day. And it's not kind of all when it started for you, but you were pretty new to it. And I remember sitting next to you, and I was briefed by a guy called Danny Buxton at the time, and he said, "This is Nick. He's not done much. He's pretty good from what we can see." And I remember sitting with you in an old McLaren. I think it was I can't remember what McLaren was. Was it?
Probably 650 or something. Was it a race car, or it was a road car? Probably a road car, wasn't it?
It was a 650 sprint car. Yeah, and I remember.
The sprint car. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty fast thing. And then didn't you ever go over GT4 car as well that day? I can't remember.
Yeah.
It's been a while though, isn't it? Yeah. Long time ago. But how's it come about? How did it come about for you?
Well, it was that sort of. I used to race bikes a long time ago. Like when I was a kid, my dad was massively into his motorbikes. So, from like age, 14 onwards, I was always racing bikes, but never anything to do with cars. And then you kind of, like life gets in the way. And as we all know, motorsport's not, cheap. And it was a case of, I started buying a couple of silly road cars, and that's where the McLaren connection came from, because a friend said, have you seen these, these new McLarens? They're really great technology. Because back when they first came out with all their, McLaren were the first to kind of start using the carbon tubs, and he was like, you should go and have a drive of them. So I bought one, started doing it on, track days like a lot of people do, and it was more, okay, I obviously need to learn, I had a bit of natural talent, but then I got a friend, Steve Glynn, who had been competing in Britcar, and he was, a really good trainer. Got him started teaching me how to go quicker. And then you get sucked into motorsport. A lot of people don't realize it's so easy to get that addiction, because it's like, okay, well, would you like a tryout in this? And it was, McLaren, as you just said, in McLaren let me have a go in a couple of their GT4 cars. But then Ginetta, which you've commentated on for years and years, I was very lucky to kind of fall into the first rung of that, and someone got me to go and have a drive in a GT5 car, and I was just hooked at that point. Because even though, I always say to people, the first thing, even when, you've done probably thousands of hot laps with people, and people always ask the question of, how fast does it go? And it's like, you wait until we get to the first corner, and you won't care about how fast it goes. It'll be how fast does it go around the corner. And Ginetta was that first experience of the GT5s being on slicks, even in like a car. What is there? They're only like 180 brake horsepower, aren't they? First time I went around a circuit in a GT5, even though it's not that quick in a straight line, it was like, wow, this is just completely different.
And is that what kind of got you hooked? Because that would have been slick, wouldn't it?
It was literally, the story was, someone had I think it was on, like, I don't know if Race Cars Direct existed back then, but they had a modified GT5 with flappy paddles for sale, and Ginetta had bought it back up off this guy in Europe, but no one really wanted to buy it because it's like it didn't fit in any real class. I wasn't thinking about going racing. I was like, oh, that looks like amazing. I picked that up because that's like a super fast GT5, because you kind of don't know what you're doing. And then someone else had it, and Ginetta then said, why don't you buy the proper race car and get someone to start teaching you to do the enter the full racing. It's like, okay, well, that sounds like good, and they explain, and I think that's what's so great about some of these feeder classes is it's kind of they can paint you a course. I'm a big believer, and I'm very anti drivers going straight into like a fast GT4 car or whatever like that, because like they often you end up with people that have a lot more crashes than are required, because you go into a really basic car. It's what teaches you all the handling, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I loved all of that early days of all about not the speed, about the racecraft and the handling.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've done your apprenticeship then? Because I'll be honest with you, mate, I am like flabbergasted by, because I know how difficult Ginetta championships are. You were the champion. You are a champion a year after really you started properly. I mean, did you know then that it was time to accelerate through the ladders as quick as you could?
Yeah, I mean, look, my background's being an entrepreneur, and so I'm ridiculously competitive in everything. So it's it was, and that was a year where I was up against two of the other fastest AMs who were as quick as some of the pros, or quicker than a bunch of the pros in the we wouldn't just be racing against the other amateur drivers, we'd be in the pack of the pro drivers as well at the same time. So it was like doubly competitive, because you're all battling these mad 17-year-old kids that have just come out of Ginetta Juniors, and so it's that's what I loved about it. It was like it was full on. So yeah, no, it was amazing to win it that second year, and that was very much like, well, if I can do this, and that's why I went into doing GT5. Once I'd won it, to me, I'm not one of these people who's like, I'll just keep trying to win the same championship. That's no interest to me. It's like, well, I've won the AM championship. Let's go, and I'm not out there to do trophy collection. Let's now go against the kids. And so the year after, I then, there was no way I was ever going to win the pro championship, because some of the drivers, especially that year, there was some incredible talents in amongst them, including I always wind up Abby Pulling, who's obviously now doing amazing things in single seaters, that I overtook her. My only fame with her was that I overtook her around, the old bank curve at Zandvoort before they got rid of it, I think turn 3 with the concrete corner. I overtook her on the outside round that corner at one of the races.
I bet she was well happy when you remind her of that.
Yeah, no, yeah, totally. No, it's great to see that she's gone on to be proper quick.
Yeah, and she's like, you mentioned Zandvoort and places like that. You've got some pretty memorable stories. And I do know one of them, but I don't know the full story about Knockhill, because I think I was commentating on one of the races. I think it was it on the Saturday? You have a couple of races, don't you? And then it was a Sunday live race. Yep. But you only, and I'm with you on this, Nick, because I've nearly done the same, but not in your not the way you did it. But you nearly missed that race.
Yeah, it was. Because I think we all love doing touring car weekend up in, not just the Knockhill circuit, it's amazing, but it's also because it tends to be on during the Edinburgh Festival. A lot of the times it clashes nicely. And I just gone out with a load of friends on the Saturday night and had a bit too much, couldn't quite get up early enough in the morning, and hadn't really thought through that how hard it is. If you turn up at 8 a.m. to get to Knockhill on the Sunday, fine. Traffic, no one's trying to get into the circuit. I think I left at about 10 a.m. and the race was, I was like, oh, that's going to be easy. Race is at 12 o'clock. Give me, I can get there an hour and a half, worst case. I literally got off the motorway, and as you know, it's just literally little back roads all the way to the circuit. And I was like, I rang up the team, was like, oh my God, I'm completely screwed. Can you I actually sent one of the team to the entrance to say, can you find one of the, because there's lots of bikes that turn up. I said, find a bike and see if they'll come and pillion me. I've got a spare helmet in the car. I'll just dump it at the side of the road and they can just pillion me back. And they couldn't find anyone to do it. So I literally, my last resort, and I can only apologize to anyone who's in that queue that day, because they must all think I was complete, lots of swear words, because I drove round on the opposite side of the road. And if you remember that road, it's like literally twisty and turny. So it was more terrifying than going up Eau Rouge at 160 miles an hour, because it was literally blind corners all the way, trying to get past the traffic to get there.
Well, Jamie O'Leary, who you'll know from Fox Motorsport, who was his media manager at Fox Motorsport, he tells the story of you getting into the assembly area with 3 minutes to go. You must have been sweating, mate, when you were sticking on your overall.
Yeah. And then the worst was I got into the entrance, and the team parking had all been closed up, and I was like, literally, there was a one of the stewards there, and he ran after, because he let me in, and I literally just dumped it, blocking probably 10 other cars. You can't park it there. It's like I've got a race.
Oh, stop it! How did the race go?
I don't know if it was that one where I can't remember actually. Can't remember if it was that day that was one of the wet races there or what, but I don't know. It was one of those ones that was like you feel elated just to have actually got in the car and not missed it. Because especially some of those weekends where it's your only race that weekend, it's like on the Sunday when you're televised, it's like, don't miss that one.
Oh, that's the big thing, isn't it, with touring cars and the ITV4 coverage, though. You see a lot of people, that is the only thing that matters. And to be fair, for the support package, it's a lot of pressure, actually, isn't it? And it's a nice thing for you now that you won't have to worry about that, because you're going to be the main stars now.
Yeah, no, it is amongst the support. You're always thinking about, and that's why, with like the juniors, especially, why it's always the best racing when they know they're on TV. So it's the same for all of us, is you want to do your best and make sure you're on there. So it is a lot of pressure. So yeah, I can't, it's just a different level to know that you're always going to be, in the glare of the TV. It was when I did it at Croft that first time, I barely remember anything going on, especially when I was on the grid. I know you're not on there that long when you're waiting, but it was literally just, it was like, felt like seconds between stopping, all the grid walk, and then the start of the race. It's like, boom, gone.
I can't tell you, mate, because I haven't raced for a few years, but I just always remember my foot shaking on the clutch. Didn't matter what race you were in. Didn't matter if it was a British touring car pole position or it was a club racing in an X5. The nerves are always there, aren't they?
Yeah. Although Jamie Stanley always told me my first ever race at Alton is always memorable for me, because I had done so much bike racing. I was actually too relaxed. And so my first ever race, I was literally, I don't know where I qualified, probably way at the back, but it was literally, I was sat there going, I was more going, just trying to take in everything and looking around. It was like, oh, they've all gone. I wasn't nervous enough. It was more of, I actually learned of during green flag laps is to like pump myself up, because I don't, you want the adrenaline, you want the nervousness to get the adrenaline going. And sometimes, I've, in some of the classes I've been too relaxed, and then it's like the first lap, if you're not like running at 110%, the other drivers are going to be, and then you're going to get mugged unless you are literally on it.
Yeah, my old team boss, who you will be working with, Marvin Humphreys at Accelerate, his wife Sandra, who is just the best lady ever, she helps out massively with the team. She used to make me drink Coke or Lucozade to try and rile me up, but I wasn't diabetic then, so I could do it. But it is getting that, it's getting that, you know, that fear into you to compete on the line. Talking of which, what the hell happened at Brands Hatch when you got absolutely Dugganed?
It was Duggan, yeah. Oh my
Ian
God.
Duggan. Wow.
I don't know. The poor old Ian, you know, he couldn't have apologized more afterwards for that. But you know, and I mean, at least I got an ITV more because I got interviewed after it, and I remember saying it's like, okay, so I've done over 100 races, and now that is officially the shortest race I've ever been in. So you know, it was literally. I was unfortunately, because my clutch went the race before, I was right at the back of the grid, and lights went out, pulled forward, and then literally, you know, sub-second later, a car was, you know, in front of me, which I T-boned, and literally my unfortunately teammate had lost, literally dumped the clutch, spun it sideways, and you know, I just went into the side of him, and that was like weekend over. So, you know,
well,
these things happen.
I've seen a few things in my time, but I was like, how's that happened? I was like trying to say it must be a broken drive shaft, or it might be a prop shaft that's gone and fired him round. But I think it was just a bit too much throttle and a 90 left, unfortunate. But the just speaking of which, actually, because I always have to ask the question, motor racing is not always the best thing in the world, is it? And you ended up in hospital at Snetterton. That was a couple of years ago in GT5.
Yeah. The last year that I did GT5, I think it was a touring car. Pretty sure it was a touring car weekend, and I think it was like 2 or 3 laps in. Can't remember which. It was like halfway around the sort of infield bit. Someone kicked up a load of dust. You know what? You know, that's the most terrifying thing for all of us, is when you know, literally you can't then see. But in sprint races, none of us back off, do we? It was literally doesn't. You know, you've just got to pick a gap. Unfortunately, someone else then spun, and I hit the side of someone else's car, literally about 100 mile an hour. But it was like one of those instant, you know, huge deceleration, even though it was, you know, not up against a wall, it was hitting the side of another car. And at the time, all I felt was a short, sharp shock. It was like cars all stopped. There was about 5 cars involved. They obviously red flagged it. Ambulances all turning up. And I got out of the car, but like a lot of these, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, you get the adrenaline so high, you know, it's like you don't feel much. Got out the car and like literally staggered and fell over. At that point, it was like, okay, there's more pain here than I was expecting. The team always winds me up, because when I was on the stretch, some point through the process, you know, they put the whole neck thing around you because they don't know what you've done to yourself, so they put your head in a neck brace. And I remember taking a selfie of my head jammed into this thing where they tape your forehead down. But very fortunately, it was in the end, it was just very, very badly pulled muscles. But they have to then go and literally take you in, scan you to death, literally. So that they when you have that big an impact, they're worried about kidneys and liver, aren't they, of internal things? Not because you don't move in the car, do you? You know. And thankfully, the other driver that I hit, and you know, you're always scared about hitting another driver in the door, but because the Ginettas are built so brilliantly, he was fine as well.
Yeah,
it's still scary.
We've definitely had some shunts lately, haven't we? But it was good to see that you got out of it okay. And it is a bit worrying for a bit, but you have to get back on the horse and crack on. Nick, you have one of the most interesting jobs, or did have one of the most interesting jobs I think I've ever heard of. And I think people will probably want to know a bit more about it. You're not doing up rental houses like it looks in the background of your
No.
house there, mate. But what did you do, and what do you still do actually, and have an involvement in?
So I was very lucky to have parents that bought me a computer back in the days when, you know, we didn't have the internet or anything, and I was very nerdy at school. So you know, I had a computer from literally, I was programming in like assembler language, like from age 10 onwards, and that set me up pretty good for a career in computing. So first I was in making computer games, and related to touring cars, actually. I worked for 2 years for, I don't know if you remember the old British touring car computer game, it was made by a company called Codemasters, who I actually worked for. Unfortunately, I wasn't involved in the Codemaster game, but it was you know, that was always a huge part of their, you know, what they were famous for was making the touring car games. Anyway, so I did all my computer games, but games are always a bit hit and miss, as we all know. So, and I wanted to you know, build a living for family and all the rest of it. So I got into, you know, I always had a bit of a maths background, so I got into data, and one thing led to another. Started building my own companies, and the thing that kind of launched me to sort of semi-fame within the tech circles was, with all this stuff going on with Elon, it's all brought it back to me, because obviously Elon Musk just bought Twitter, and I was very early, very early Twitter user. In fact, I worked with Twitter when they were literally less than 20 people, and I built a business off the back of Twitter. So I actually invented the original, if you remember going back at least 10, 12 years, whenever you wanted to share an article on Twitter, there used to be buttons on you know, the BBC or any, you know, any of the websites to retweet the button, the link onto Twitter. And I basically invented that button, and I built a whole business out of that, kind of the data that came out of it. Because then, and that was just purely by accident. It was just, I thought, oh, you know, we need an easier way to share stories onto Twitter, because I launched a news service called, back then it was called TweetMeme, which was basically a kind of a homepage for the most popular news stories that were on Twitter in the day. And I wanted people to share more news, because it was then basically data to work out, well, which are the most popular ones. And then literally I started getting big brands. Like, I had literally out of the blue, like randomly one day, Toyota rang me up and said, I see you're running this thing to do with Twitter, and we'd like to understand more about how people are in, you know, this is way before, you know, what people now call social media analytics. That didn't exist back then, you know, but the brands were like, could see that it was all blowing up on Twitter, but they didn't have the tools to understand how their brand was being represented. And I basically built the first and then the biggest business in the world for that, to analyze social media, kind of what's going on for, you know, all the world's brands. So we had literally all the world's banks, fashion, you know, all the fashion brands you can think of, Coca-Cola, Pet, you know, all of those literally using our platform to understand what was being said. So, you know, that's basically what launched my tech career. So I sold out of that, and that's, to be honest, was the instigation of being able to then afford to get into the racing 7 or 8 years ago.
That is absolutely mind-blowing, and people will find that fascinating. It's like, it's just crazy stuff. Like, literally, I love social media. I've made a living from it with British touring cars, but I find that absolutely just crazy.
Well, it's huge. It's huge now, isn't it? You know, but so, you know, we all, you know, for me, it's a big part of what I want to try and do. Part of touring cars is, you know, how do we get touring cars onto the likes of TikTok and that more than they are at the moment. You know, I'm lobbying, you know, ITV and others around how do we get better. I think if there's one thing I miss for the ITV coverage is not enough in-car footage that I could watch later. You know, I'd like to see it. I'd like to see the drivers to be able to post more of their, you know, watch this moment kind of stuff, you know, so, you know, I'd like to see more of that out there, because I just think there'd be huge fan engagement with, you know, more of that kind of in-car footage.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to probably see from your perspective? As I'm a fan and I've got ideas as well, but I think from someone as professional as yourself that deals with this kind of stuff and maybe knows a bit more what the real fan wants. Is there anything else that we could do with
I just think it's always behind, you know, it's time, you know, the show obviously is such a packed schedule. What, you know, what I think social media can fill in for, and what you know, is missing to me is more the behind the scenes stuff, you know, more the personalities of the drivers, but also just inside, you know, I think whenever, I'm sure you're saying, whenever we get fans come in and they're so fascinated by the inside of the car, you know, they don't realize how, you know, because obviously they look at them and go, well, that, you know, that's a Ford Focus, that's a whatever, and then they look inside, it's like, oh, where's the rest? You know, it's just so completely different, and they want to know what all the buttons are, you know. So I for me, I'll certainly be making a lot more fan engagement content around sort of my journey of getting people understand, you know, things like, you know, mundane stuff that I think people find, you know, seat fittings, you know, why do you need that? Because I don't think a lot of fans realize how much, you know, how hard it is, how much you get thrown around inside the car, and what, you know, how you're held in there, how all the buttons work, how the, you know, again, just a lot of, I think a lot of stuff that people would be interested in, that of just behind the scenes.
Yeah. How do you see the demographic of British touring cars? Is it, it's a typical, it's a bit like British Superbikes, I suppose. It's the working class person, isn't it, that comes and watches a lot of these races. And do you think they've got TikTok, haven't they? They've got stuff like that.
No, it's hard if I haven't really looked at the TikTok data of it, but what I do worry about though is without it being more on these kind of you know, let's say that, you know, the instant access services, aren't they? We're all getting much more used to consuming things on, you know, streaming services like Netflix or whatever, but, you know, and TikTok's almost like that on cocaine. You know, it's like such small chunks of content that's very addictive. And I think you know, let's face it, the sort of 13 to 25s, you know, that's where they live. And I think you know, sports, and that's why esports is much more popular for that demographic, is because a lot of that kind of content, they're used to making that kind of content, and we need to get more of that content, so that then they come along and then realize actually the in-person racing is much for them. You know, I still think there's you know, let's face it, dads take their kids along to the racing, don't they, to get them into it. But I just think there's a better job to be done to take advantage of getting people engaged with it.
Yeah. What did you make of British touring cars when you first got involved, when you come to Croft and did that one-off race? That was that you were replacing Rick Parfitt, I think.
Gosh, yeah, that's it. It was Rick. Rick had his back, couldn't do Croft. So yeah, it was it was a blur. You know, it really was a blur. I mean, obviously you have to do touring cars, you have to do your 300 kilometers in a car before that. So you know, Mr. Gow was very friendly in terms of giving me some time on the circuit, so I could go and get the time done, because it was all a bit of a rush. But it's literally the 2 days as a driver are just filled up, because by the time you've done the free practices, the qualifying, and the kind of, whenever you're wandering around, like, you know, even me, for doing just a one-off, literally you walk 10 steps and, you know, people want signatures, and it's like, I can't imagine what it's like to be, you know, Tom or Ash. You know, it's probably why they have to hide constantly, because literally you can't go anywhere. But there's so many other things that you've got to be doing in terms of looking at data and all the rest of it. I asked Jade because I remember her first experience where she got a one-off at Silverstone. I said, Jodie, what was your learning from doing that one-off? And you won't believe, what do you reckon she said to me of what the number one thing to do on the day, other than just enjoy it, obviously?
Take a Sharpie with you?
No, it was find time to eat. She said it's like between races was like just have a sandwich at access, because you literally have no time to sit down and actually eat properly at any time, because you've got 3 races on the Sunday. So it's finding time to actually shove something in your mouth, and you obviously need the energy. You've got to be eating between it. So that was hilarious. It was great advice.
Yeah, that's the best advice that you could give. I remember being diabetic and I struggled to find the time to eat, because the races are so close. Then you've got autograph sessions and amazing, just loads of stuff going on like that. Nick, we've got to talk about 2023, and I'm very interested to see what your thoughts are on what you're achieving to do. Is it win races? Are you going to win the championship? Are you going to upset Tom Ingram, your team? What are you going to do, mate? Tell us more.
I think realistically, even top pros, it takes the time to bed into a championship of that quality. So I kind of want to follow the path of Creasy. I've got the best starting position ever, because with Accelerate, I've got an amazing car. I've got 2 very strong Tom and Tom to learn from. So I certainly think getting some Jack Sears points, I don't think a podium is on the cards, although I am known, the one thing I'm always very bullish about, if it's a wet race, then I'm up for it against anyone. I do love in a lot of the classes against the pro kids. I've been on pole several times in the wet. So and I wind up my pro trainer Jamie, because I've beaten Jamie in the wet numerous times. So that bit I'd be very happy for. But I want to number one, enjoy it. I want to be show that I can do it at this level, enjoy it, and just if a top 15 finish would be fantastic in the first year, and because I know what that top 15, the level of quality there is just so high. So I know I've got to fight hard to be able to get to that sort of level.
Yeah, definitely. When you look at the likes of Tom Chilton, who I know is very, very, very quick, even he on some weekends would have been happy with a top 10 finish. That shows the level of competitiveness. And I think the fans sometimes are too quick to judge people. And I always say that your first year in touring cars is free, because you shouldn't expect anything. And anything you get is a bonus, isn't it, really?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think people recognize, when you see those cars running so tight together, it's a fight, out there. I've done a lot of sprint racing, and we're pretty tight together, but with the tin tops, that they can lean on each other. It's obviously not what it was like 15 years ago, where when you were doing it, people take big chunks out of each other and you could just get away with it. But it's still, it's very, very tight racing. So, I have I'll enjoy it, do the best I can, and say I've got the best opportunity to, be up there as anyone.
Yeah. You seem to me like a person who's obviously going out there to enjoy it. You're going to love it. You're very competitive because of the business that you've built up. And that always works well for you. What would you say to fans about what to expect from you? Is it because there are certain people who've come and gone in the championship? Some have been absolutely stunning, amazing people, and they're still there. Creasy, Rick Parfitt, really open, to fans. But there's been other people, mate, who have caused absolute chaos. And I don't condone social media sometimes where they've gone at them hard. What are we going to see from you? Are you looking to upset everyone?
No, you know, I certainly, I'm sure, you know, Gal, but you know, as a one-off, you certainly, you know, there to make sure you don't get in anyone's way. But I also have done enough races that I can be clean and you know, because things like qualifying, even free practice, are pretty full on. You know, I found that in that even that first weekend, you know, you are. I remember saying it's like during qualifying, it's like people were throwing it off in corners. You know, there's just a lot of stuff going on. It was like everyone is like 110%, and it's like, and I didn't get in it. You know, I managed to drive my own laps, got my times in, and you know, the one thing again, I don't think the fans recognise is you have to get to a level where the driving is automatic, and then you can pay attention to what shit's going on around you. If you are, I think for a lot of people learning, and you know, me and you spend a lot of time on circuit with, you know, newbies when you're doing track days, or all the rest of it is, it's just learning of what other people are going to do. And when people are learning, they you know, 110% of their brain power is on just keeping the car not going off the circuit. So what I, you know, I know I'm going to be able to, you know, hopefully keep it on circuit, not cause trouble, but just I want to be engaged with the fans as well and show them what it is to be, you know, part of it, and put, you know, give up as much of my time as I can to you know, show certain sides of it that, you know, I also know a lot of the other drivers, you know, they've got a lot of sponsors to please and time that they have to dedicate. You know, I still have a lot of that, but my certainly promise to the fans is to show a lot of the background of what I'm going to have to go through in terms of training, you know, fitness and all the rest of it, or the continued fitness, because obviously what I do, you still have to be pretty damn fit to do it. So it's, yeah, just show a fun side of it, and you know, go out and enjoy it. But I'm definitely not going to be out there ramming anyone deliberately.
You sound perfect for British touring cars, mate. and is this a 2 or 3 year plan? Is it a 1 year? I'm just going to have a go. I mean, commercially, you've got sponsors of your own that are going to help out.
Yeah.
And you're probably looking at more going forward as well.
Yeah, you know, you never, you know, let's see how it all pans out. You know, in the end, for me, I've got to come out the other end of it, of enjoying it, and then, you know, see what I do next after it. But I'm gonna, you know, love every minute of it first, and then, you know, see where to go. And it's just for me, it's the top experience. But yeah, you know, it's you know, the key thing is, as you said, I've come out of a tech business now. I was doing British GT last year, juggling that with my business. I'm out of my business, so I can now like put every effort into, you know, being up there and putting as lot behind the scenes as I can into the racing as well.
Well, I think me and you might need a chat then, because maybe we could set up some kind of fan zone or something for the fans to engage. But there's definitely going to be some great things.
Yeah, no, I think the Saturdays in particular, when I've got way more to, you know, the Sunday's difficult, but the Saturday, you know, I've really enjoyed your content you've made before, especially on Facebook, where, you know, you got the likes of Creasy, you know, interviewing everyone, and it's, you know, I think that's what the fans want to see more of, and I'm, you know, definitely want to be there doing lots more of that. Maybe
then watch this space to the fans.
Yep.
Well, definitely we'll be all intrigued and can't wait to see what you can do, Nick. But Nick Halstead, 2023 Accelerate British Touring Car Driver. I can't wait. Thank you so much for giving up your time, mate. And yeah, I can't wait.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much, Paul.
See how you get on, mate.
Cheers.
Nice one.